ever felt like the things you used to worry about don't matter anymore? As we get older, our priorities shift. And the truth is, many of the things that once felt urgent or important simply lose their weight. After 70, you begin to see the world differently. What once kept you up at night no longer even makes your list of concerns. And there's a kind of peace in that realization. In this video, we're exploring 8 things that don't matter after 70, even if they used to seem like everything. From chasing approval to clinging to old regrets, these things quietly fall away, leaving behind what truly counts. Understanding this shift can bring not only relief, but also a deeper sense of freedom and purpose. Stay with me until the end, because one of these 8 things might unlock a change in the way you think about your past and help you embrace your future with more clarity and confidence than ever before. Now let's get started. Number 1, chasing status or titles. One of the first things that stops mattering after 70 is status, titles, positions, and the social rankings that once seemed so important. When you're younger, it's easy to feel defined by what you do, the promotions you get, or the reputation you build. People measure themselves by their careers, their roles in the community, or even by how many people recognize their name. But after a certain point, you realize that none of those things reflect who you truly are. They're labels, temporary, and often more about how others see you than how you see yourself. As the years pass, you start to understand that titles don't comfort you when you're alone. They don't hold your hand when you're going through loss. They don't make your days richer or your heart lighter. What matters more is how you treated people, what memories you created, and how you made others feel when they were around you. Many older adults begin to feel this shift naturally. You might look back at your younger years and realize how much energy you spent trying to climb a ladder that, in the end, leads to a place that feels kind of empty. Not because the success wasn't real, but because it just doesn't hold the same meaning anymore. Take someone like Harold, 78 years old, who spent decades as a high-level executive in a major company. He once believed his job title was who he was, but now he spends his mornings walking the neighborhood, chatting with neighbors, feeding birds, and playing cards with his grandkids. No one in his current life calls him by his old title, and he's never been happier. That's the irony. The things you used to think were essential to being someone, titles, awards, recognition, eventually become just part of your story, not your identity. And once you let go of the pressure to be seen a certain way, you get to live in a way that feels more true to you. There's a deep sense of peace that comes from knowing you no longer have to prove yourself. You've lived, you've earned your place, and now status becomes less about titles and more about the kind of legacy you quietly leave behind through kindness, wisdom, and presence. Number 2, pleasing everyone. After 70, the need to please everyone starts to fade, and what a relief that can be. In earlier decades, it's common to carry the invisible weight of others' opinions. You worry about saying the right thing, making the right impression, or being liked by everyone in the room. But somewhere along the road of growing older, something shifts. You realize that not only is it impossible to make everyone happy, but it's also not your job anymore. You start to see how much time and energy you once spent trying to meet others' expectations. Maybe it was dressing a certain way to be accepted, agreeing with things you didn't believe in just to keep the peace, or holding your tongue so no one would feel uncomfortable. And at the time, it may have felt necessary, but now it feels unnecessary, exhausting even, and in many ways dishonest to who you really are. Older adults often discover the quiet power of self-acceptance. It doesn't mean becoming rude or dismissive. It just means you no longer bend yourself into a shape that isn't yours. You speak more plainly. You stop apologizing for your thoughts. You stop shrinking yourself just to fit in. And surprisingly, the people who matter still stay. They're the ones who love you for exactly who you are, not for how well you perform social gymnastics. Let's take someone like Marlene, age 75. For most of her life, she was the peacekeeper in her family, the one who made sure everyone got along, even when it drained her. But recently, she stopped over-explaining herself. She doesn't attend every event out of obligation, and she's noticed something: the world didn't fall apart. The people who truly care still invite her, still love her, and now understand her better. And she feels more relaxed than she has in years. The truth is, after 70, your peace becomes more important than someone else's momentary approval. You've lived long enough to know that people's opinions change all the time, and often they say more about the person giving them than the one receiving them. This freedom of not needing to be liked by everyone is one of the great gifts of aging. It allows you to live more truthfully, speak more clearly, and rest more deeply in who you are. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 2 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Now let's move forward. Number 3, outward appearance. Outward appearance, once a central part of how we judge ourselves and others, begins to lose its grip after 70. In our earlier years, looks often felt like currency, something we measured, compared, and sometimes worried about endlessly. Whether it was wrinkles, weight, gray hair, or thinning skin, these things could cast long shadows over how we felt about ourselves. But with time, a new kind of clarity sets in. How you look matters far less than how you live. As people age, they begin to see beauty in different forms. It's no longer about looking flawless in the mirror. It's about having eyes that light up when you smile, hands that have held others through hard times, and a voice that carries calm and warmth. You begin to appreciate how your body tells a story, one that's rich with laughter, pain, joy, and survival. And rather than fighting to appear young, you start to see the quiet dignity in simply being real. There's also something powerful that happens when you stop chasing approval based on appearance. You reclaim your time, your energy, and your self-respect. You wear what makes you comfortable. You show up with grace instead of shame. And surprisingly, others respond to that authenticity more than they ever did to a polished image. Take, for instance, Evelyn, 82. She spent much of her 50s and 60s buying creams and dyes, trying to cover up every new line and spot. But in her 70s, she let her silver hair grow in, tossed out her scale, and started dressing in colors that made her feel alive instead of smaller. And what did she notice? Strangers complimented her glow, not her weight. Friends said she looked radiant, not younger. Because when you're at ease with yourself, others feel it, and it's contagious. In fact, the obsession with appearance often robs us of the very things that make us attractive: confidence, joy, and presence. And those things, they don't wrinkle or sag. They deepen. They become more beautiful with time. No one remembers the way your cheekbones looked at 40, but they remember how you made them feel when you walked into a room. So if you're still checking the mirror too often, still judging the creases or comparing yourself to younger versions, you can let that go. Because the truth is, the people who love you now aren't looking at your surface. They're looking at your eyes, your energy, and your heart. And that, after 70, is more than enough. Number 4, accumulating more money. By the time you reach your 70s, the pursuit of more money often shifts from being a necessity to something that simply doesn't carry the same meaning it once did. That's not to say money isn't important, of course. Having enough to live comfortably, cover healthcare, and enjoy your days matters. But the endless chase for more, for one more investment, one more property, one more safety net, starts to feel hollow when your time becomes more valuable than your net worth. Many people spend their younger years in survival mode or in pursuit of goals tied to income. Retirement plans, college savings, mortgages, credit scores. It's easy to get wrapped up in financial achievement, as if it's the scoreboard of life. But after 70, priorities evolve. You begin to understand that money can buy stability, but not peace. It can buy access, but not joy. And it certainly can't buy time. What becomes clear is that experiences, not earnings, leave the lasting impression. The laughs around your dinner table, the quiet afternoons spent in the garden, the warm conversations during long walks, those are the moments that define a life well lived. Not the zeros in your account, not the size of your estate. Look at someone like Gerald, 76, who worked hard all his life and saved diligently. But now, instead of stressing about growing his savings, he's focused on enjoying them. He takes trips with his daughter, donates to causes he believes in, and treats himself to things he once deemed unnecessary. And what he's found is that using his money to create memories and make life lighter for himself and others is far more satisfying than watching it sit untouched in a bank account. There's a kind of wisdom that settles in after 70, a knowing that the richness of life has little to do with how much you accumulate and everything to do with how you spend the time you have left. After all, you can't take it with you, and no one wants to be remembered just for having money. They want to be remembered for how they gave, how they lived, and how they made others feel. So if you're still caught up in the cycle of financial comparison, or still pushing for just a little more, maybe it's time to ask, what's the money really for now? And what would it mean to stop accumulating and start enjoying? If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 4 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Now let's move forward. Number 5, holding on to old grudges. One of the heaviest things people carry into their later years, yet one of the least useful, is an old grudge. After 70, the need to keep score, stay angry, or relive past wrongs starts to feel more like a burden than a defense. You begin to see how much energy it takes to stay upset and how little it actually gives you in return. Grudges often come from real pain. A betrayal, a harsh word, a broken relationship, these things cut deep. And for years, you may have held on to that pain as a way of protecting yourself or making sense of what happened. But at some point, the question becomes, is this anger still protecting you? Or is it just keeping you from peace? Aging has a way of softening sharp edges. You start to care less about who was right and more about how much time you've lost being stuck in the past. You begin to realize that forgiveness isn't about excusing bad behavior. It's about releasing your own heart from the grip of old wounds. It's about choosing freedom over bitterness. Consider someone like Doris, 81, who didn't speak to her sister for over 30 years because of a family argument that escalated far beyond its original cause. When her health began to decline, she reached out not to reopen the wound, but to finally let it go. They talked, they cried, they laughed again. And in those final years together, they found a closeness that neither of them thought was possible anymore. All because one of them decided to stop holding on. Letting go doesn't mean you forget what happened. It means you stop letting it define you. The anger, the resentment, they may have felt justified at the time, but now they just take up space where peace could be. They cloud your relationships, your sleep, even your joy. And after 70, joy is something worth protecting. The truth is, no one gets through life without being hurt, but not everyone gets the gift of growing old enough to choose how they carry that hurt. You can carry it like a weight, or you can set it down like a stone you no longer need. What matters more now is ease. And forgiving, not for the sake of the past, but for the sake of your present, may be one of the most powerful ways to give that to yourself. Number 6, trying to control everything. One of the most liberating truths that sinks in after 70 is this: control is mostly an illusion. In your younger years, you may have tried to manage everything. Your schedule, your children, your finances, your health, even the future itself. You planned, you adjusted, and you worked hard to make sure life went according to script. But over time, life teaches you something else. That no matter how carefully you plan, some things will always remain outside your grasp. This realization doesn't come all at once, it unfolds. Maybe it begins with the unexpected diagnosis of a loved one, or a moment when your body doesn't quite cooperate like it used to. Or perhaps it's the sudden loss of someone you thought would always be around. These moments can be painful, but they can also be clarifying. Because once you stop trying to control everything, you begin to notice what you can control, and that's where the real power lives. You can't stop change. You can't stop people from making their own choices. You can't stop time from moving forward. But you can choose how you respond to it. You can choose how gently you speak, how kindly you act, and how peacefully you let go of what you were never meant to carry in the first place. There's a kind of quiet strength that comes from surrendering, not in weakness, but in wisdom. It's the strength to say, I don't know what's coming next, but I'll meet it when it arrives. It's the ability to sit in uncertainty without fear, because you've already lived through enough to know that even the hardest days pass, and even the most unpredictable paths can lead to unexpected beauty. Look at someone like Frank, 79, who spent most of his life trying to keep everything just so. He managed his business, his household, and even tried to manage how others behaved. But after his wife passed away, he found himself in a space where nothing felt in control. Slowly, he learned to live differently. He started gardening, not because he could control how things grew, but because he learned to enjoy the process. He stopped trying to plan every detail of family gatherings and instead focused on being fully present. And in that loosened grip, he found something unexpected: peace. Control can make you feel safe, but it can also make you tense, tired, and constantly on edge. And after 70, what most people crave isn't control, it's calm. The kind that comes when you stop clenching your fists and start opening your hands. So if you've been trying to hold everything together, remember it's okay to let go. Not everything needs to be managed. Some things just need to be witnessed, accepted, and lived through, with grace and with trust. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 6 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Now let's move forward. Number 7, keeping up with trends. One of the quiet freedoms that comes with age is realizing you don't have to keep up anymore. Not with fashion, not with the latest apps, not with what's trending on television or social media. After 70, the pressure to stay current begins to feel more like noise and less like something that actually adds value to your life. In your younger years, it might have felt important to stay on top of what's new. Maybe you changed your wardrobe to match the times, adopted new habits, because everyone else was doing it, or felt the need to stay in the loop just to feel relevant. But now relevance is defined differently. It's not about being up to date, it's about being deeply present. And presence doesn't go out of style. Think about how much energy is spent trying to adapt to trends that change faster than the seasons. You buy something new, only for it to be outdated next month. You try out some new app everyone's talking about, only to find it doesn't make your life any better. The chase can be exhausting and ultimately unrewarding. But when you stop trying to keep up, you start noticing what actually brings you joy. You pull out the clothes you like wearing, not because they're in fashion, but because they feel like you. You reread the books that moved you. You listen to music that reminds you of a simpler time. You focus less on what's trending and more on what's timeless. Look at Walter, age 84. His grandchildren used to tease him for still wearing his old flannel shirts and listening to records on his turntable. But eventually they started asking questions. What's that song? Why do you wear those boots? They began to see that what once seemed outdated was actually authentic, and that authenticity drew them in more than any trend ever could. The truth is, trends are built on the idea that we're not enough unless we change. But after 70, you realize you are enough, just as you are. Your experiences, your stories, your way of being, they carry a richness that no new gadget or look could ever replace. So, if you've been feeling out of the loop, or wondering if you're missing something by not keeping up, here's the truth. You're not missing anything that matters. What's meaningful now isn't how current you are, it's how connected you are. To yourself, to others, to what really lasts. Number 8, always being busy or productive. In a world that constantly glorifies hustle and productivity, one of the most radical things you can do after 70 is to stop. Not because you've given up, but because you finally realize constant busyness doesn't always equal a meaningful life. When you're younger, being busy often feels like a badge of honor. You fill every hour with to-do lists, appointments, errands, obligations. There's pride in being in demand, in always having somewhere to be or something to do. But as you age, you begin to question, what's the cost of all that movement? You start to notice that some of the most valuable moments happen when you're not busy. A quiet cup of coffee in the morning sun, a slow walk without a destination, a phone call with an old friend that doesn't have to end quickly. And those moments, small as they seem, begin to feel bigger than any packed schedule ever did. There's also a deeper truth at play here. After 70, your time becomes more precious. Not because you're running out, but because you finally see it. You recognize that how you spend your days is how you spend your life. And filling every hour just for the sake of feeling productive doesn't always leave room for the kind of meaning you crave now. Take someone like Linda, 77. She used to feel guilty if she wasn't doing something, anything. But now she makes space for rest without apology. She spends her afternoons reading, not racing. She no longer feels the need to explain why she didn't get everything done. And strangely enough, she feels more alive than she did in her most productive years. That's because there's wisdom in slowness, in stillness, in simply being. It's where your body finds ease, your mind finds clarity, and your spirit finds rest. And in a culture that tells us to constantly do more, choosing to pause is an act of deep courage. So if you've been feeling guilty for not doing enough, or wondering if you're falling behind, here's something to remember. You've earned your right to slow down. You don't have to prove your worth through activity. You've already proven it by being here, by surviving, by showing up. And now the most important thing isn't how much you do. It's how fully you live in the moments you don't rush through. Final thoughts. At 70 and beyond, something powerful begins to happen. You begin to see with clearer eyes what actually matters. And just as importantly, you begin to see what doesn't. Letting go of the chase for status, approval, or control isn't a loss, it's a return. A return to yourself. A return to peace. Think back on the 8 things we talked about today. Which one felt most familiar to you? Which one are you ready to release? These questions aren't meant to be heavy, they're meant to be freeing. Because the truth is, you've carried enough. And now you get to choose what stays. You've lived long enough to know that the world won't stop spinning if you slow down, say no, or stop trying to please everyone. What the world needs from you now isn't perfection. It's presence. It's your laughter, your wisdom, your quiet example of what it looks like to live fully, even when the world tells you you're past your prime. But you're not past anything. You're right on time, right where you need to be. Thank you for joining us today. Have you ever shared something personal, only to regret it later? As we age, the value of privacy becomes clearer. There's a wisdom that develops over time, not just about what to say, but what not to say. After 70, the things we share can carry unexpected consequences. And sometimes what feels like an innocent conversation can turn into stress, misunderstanding, or even vulnerability we didn't intend to create. In this video, we're exploring 9 things you should never share with anyone after 70. Not because you need to hide, but because protecting your peace, privacy, and personal safety matters more than ever. These aren't secrets rooted in shame. They're boundaries built from experience. Each one is designed to help you avoid emotional strain, protect your legacy, and preserve your dignity in this important chapter of life. Whether you've always been an open book or you're naturally more reserved, you'll likely find that these 9 things are worth holding closer. Because what you don't say can sometimes be just as powerful as what you do. And choosing what to share or not share doesn't make you distant. It makes you wise. Stay with me until the end, because by the time we reach the last point, you may find yourself seeing your everyday conversations in a whole new light, and maybe even setting boundaries you didn't know you needed. Let's begin. Number 1, your detailed financial status. One of the most important things to protect after 70 is your financial information, not just from strangers, but sometimes even from well-meaning friends or family. Talking openly about how much you have in savings, what your pension looks like, or the full value of your home can seem harmless, especially in casual conversations. But once that information is out there, it's out there. And not everyone handles it with care. There's a subtle shift that happens when people know what you have. Expectations change. Boundaries blur. You might find yourself being asked for help more often, or pressured into opportunities that don't really benefit you. Even well-intentioned loved ones may begin to assume access to things that were never promised, simply because they know what you've got. And beyond that, oversharing your finances can invite manipulation. Scams targeting seniors are on the rise, and the more details someone has about your income, assets, or lifestyle, the easier it becomes for them to tailor their approach. Sometimes the threat doesn't come from outside your circle. It comes from within. That doesn't mean living in secrecy. It means being discerning. Share financial details only with those who need to know. Your financial advisor, your spouse or trusted partner, and perhaps one legally designated family member or executor. But casual acquaintances, distant relatives, even overly curious neighbors, they don't need access to those parts of your life. People who age wisely often treat money conversations like medical records, not because they're ashamed, but because they understand the risks of handing over too much information. And that boundary doesn't make you unfriendly. It makes you protected. It means your financial decisions stay yours and your peace of mind stays intact. Number 2, your personal medical history in casual settings. At a certain age, health becomes part of everyday life. Doctor's appointments, new medications, aches and pains, they're real, they're present, and they're often shared in conversation without a second thought. But after 70, it's worth pausing before diving into the details of your medical history, especially in casual or non-intimate settings. Not because your story isn't important, but because how it's received can shape how others see and treat you. When you speak openly about every diagnosis, every surgery, every concern, there's a risk that others begin to view you only through that lens. You might notice people becoming overly cautious around you, offering pity instead of respect, or making assumptions about what you can and can't do. And once you're placed in that category of being fragile or in decline, it's surprisingly difficult to step out of it. There's also the emotional toll. Constantly retelling your health journey can keep you tethered to worry, fear, or even identity based on illness. And when those details are shared with people who aren't close, it can lead to uncomfortable comments, unsolicited advice, or even judgment you never asked for. You might hear things like, "Should you really be traveling?" Or maybe you shouldn't be living alone anymore. All from people who barely know the full picture. Instead, choose to share selectively. With trusted loved ones, healthcare professionals, or those walking a similar path, yes, talk freely. There's comfort in connection. But with others, you can simply say, "I'm managing some things, but I'm doing all right," and leave it at that. You're not hiding, you're preserving your autonomy. People who age with grace often speak with intention. They know when to open up and when to keep certain truths tucked away, not out of pride, but out of wisdom. Because not every detail deserves to be on display, and protecting your narrative is part of protecting your strength. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 2 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Now let's move forward. Number 3, your private regrets or past mistakes. Everyone has chapters they'd rather not read out loud. But after 70, there's a deeper layer to what we choose to revisit. And more importantly, what we choose to reveal. Regret has a strange way of lingering, especially when shared in the wrong setting. And while honesty and vulnerability have their place, constantly recounting your past mistakes can do more harm than healing, especially when those stories are handed to people who haven't earned your trust. When you speak about regrets, choices you didn't make, chances you missed, people you hurt, you open a tender place in yourself. And if the listener meets that moment with judgment, disinterest, or even casual dismissal, it can reinforce pain instead of offering relief. What was meant to be freeing becomes another weight to carry. You may notice that when you share these things with someone who doesn't hold them with care, it changes how they see you. They may treat you differently, define you by a single story, or begin to overstep with advice, opinions, or assumptions about who you are today, but you are not your past. You are not a list of wrong turns or missed opportunities. There's great wisdom in knowing which parts of your story are meant to be shared, and which are meant to be processed privately or with someone truly safe. That might be a therapist, a spiritual advisor, or a lifelong friend who knows your heart. But with others, it's okay to simply say, there are things I've learned the hard way, and leave it there. The older you get, the more you understand that peace isn't found in constant confession, it's found in perspective. In realizing that your past shaped you, but it doesn't own you. That your mistakes may explain a few things, but they don't define the whole of you. People who walk through their 70s and beyond with steady dignity tend to carry their past lightly. Not because they're hiding it, but because they've made peace with it. And they've learned that not every story is meant for every audience. Number 4, your will or inheritance plans with non-legal parties. There's something deeply personal and often deeply emotional about what you choose to leave behind. After 70, many people start thinking more seriously about their will, their assets, and how they want their legacy to be passed on. But here's the truth, unless someone is legally involved in managing that process, it's almost always better to keep those details private. When you start sharing who's getting what, how much or when, you unintentionally open the door to conflict. Expectations form, comparisons begin. People start wondering why one person was chosen over another, or why something was divided the way it was. Even in close families, even with good intentions, money and inheritance can stir up jealousy, entitlement, and misunderstanding faster than almost any topic. What's more, sharing this kind of information before things are finalized, or without legal context, can backfire. You might change your mind later. You might revise your will. You might discover circumstances you didn't anticipate. And when those details have already been spoken aloud, changing them can feel like betrayal, even if it's the right decision for you. That's why people who age wisely tend to keep these matters within a small, trusted circle. They work with an attorney. They choose an executor. They document their wishes clearly and legally, and they limit casual conversations that could complicate things down the road. It's not secrecy, it's stewardship. Sharing your plans with everyone may feel transparent, but it often invites unnecessary pressure. And when you prioritize clarity and legal protection over open discussion, you protect not just your assets, but your peace of mind and your family's long-term relationships. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 4 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Now let's move forward. Number 5, your emotional vulnerabilities with untrustworthy people. There's a special kind of strength that comes with age. The strength to know when to open your heart and when to protect it. After 70, emotional clarity becomes even more important. You've seen enough to know that not everyone who listens deserves to hear what's deepest in you. And while it's healthy to talk about your feelings, sharing emotional vulnerabilities with people who haven't earned your trust can leave you exposed in ways that hurt more than help. Sometimes the person seems kind on the surface. They nod, they ask questions, they act interested. But later you hear your private worries passed around like casual gossip. Or worse, your fears are used against you to manipulate, to control, or to create a version of you that isn't fair or accurate. You might mention how lonely you've been feeling, or that you're scared of losing independence, or that certain family dynamics weigh heavily on your heart. And if those words fall into the wrong hands, they can be misinterpreted or turned into a story that paints you as unstable, incapable, or overly emotional. People who age gracefully learn to share their heart with care. They don't stop being open, they just become discerning. They know that vulnerability isn't about telling everyone everything. It's about knowing who's safe, in who's consistent, who holds your truth gently and respects what you've shared. It's okay to take your time, to test the waters, to observe how someone handles your small shares before you hand them the deeper ones. And if someone has already shown they gossip, twist your words, or use your feelings to gain control, you owe them nothing more. Your emotional well-being is not their business. Your heart has been through enough. At this stage, it deserves safety, kindness, and maturity in return. And the less you share with people who haven't earned that place in your life, the more space you create for those who have. Number 6, your relationship issues with your spouse or partner. Every relationship has its ups and downs, even the strong ones. And after decades together, it's normal for disagreements, frustrations, or even old wounds to surface from time to time. But once you reach your 70s, one of the wisest choices you can make is to protect your relationship by not airing out those struggles with people who aren't directly involved or who can't offer meaningful help. It might feel relieving in the moment to vent about your spouse to a friend, a neighbor, or even a family member. Maybe you share that you've been feeling unheard or that a certain behavior keeps bothering you. But what often happens next is this: the listener forms an opinion. And once that opinion takes root, it changes how they see your partner, even if things improve between you later on. What was once a private disagreement now becomes part of your public story. People begin to make assumptions. They may offer unsolicited advice, or worse, they may start taking sides without knowing the full picture. And that can put even more strain on a relationship you've worked hard to build and maintain. There's also another layer. Sharing relationship frustrations too freely can sometimes keep you stuck in them. When you vent but don't take action, the story hardens. You relive the conflict over and over instead of moving through it. But when you choose discretion, when you bring those concerns to your partner directly, or to a counselor, or to someone truly objective, you open the door for healing instead of judgment. Couples who endure over time tend to keep certain things sacred. Not secret, but sacred. They know that just because you're upset doesn't mean the world needs to know. And they understand that protecting the image of your partner, even during hard seasons, is a form of long-term love. So speak up when something's wrong, but speak wisely. Protect your connection from unnecessary noise, and trust that some conversations, the most important ones, are meant to be had only with the person they're truly about. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 6 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Now let's move forward. Number 7, your views on your adult children's choices. As a parent, it's natural to care deeply about your children, even when they're well into adulthood. You want the best for them. You want to protect them. And sometimes you see choices they're making about parenting, relationships, finances, or lifestyle that don't sit right with you. But after 70, one of the most challenging yet important skills to master is knowing when to stay silent. Sharing your opinions about your adult children's lives, especially with others, can backfire quickly. What you intend as concern may be heard as criticism. What you see as wisdom may be received as judgment. And when those opinions get back to your children, even through innocent channels, it can create distance, resentment, or even long-term strain in the relationship. You may feel tempted to talk about it with a friend or a sibling. I just don't understand why Michael quit his job, or I wish Lisa would raise the kids differently. But once that leaves your lips, it lives in someone else's mind, and their perspective of your child can change forever. Worse, if word gets back to them, the trust you've built can take a serious hit. People who maintain strong relationships with their grown children know how to practice emotional restraint. They remind themselves that advice not asked for often feels like control. They wait for the invitation. They speak gently when it comes. And above all, they keep private opinions where they belong. Private. This doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you start trusting. Trusting that your children are living their own lives, learning in their own way. And trusting that your quiet support, your consistent presence, and your respectful distance often speak louder than any opinion ever could. Your wisdom still matters, but when offered at the right time, in the right way, it lands with love instead of resistance. And in the long run, that respect builds the kind of connection that lasts. Number 8, your passwords, PINs, or important access information. After 70, managing your digital and financial security becomes more important than ever, but so does knowing who to trust with your sensitive information. Sharing passwords, banking access, or key personal data, even with family, should never be done casually. Not because you expect people to misuse it, but because the risk grows the more widely it's shared. It might feel convenient to give your grandson your email password so he can help you reset something. Or maybe you've told a neighbor where you keep your checkbook in case of an emergency. But once that information leaves your control, you can't always predict where it will go or how it might be used. Elder fraud is real, and it doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes it's a family member who feels entitled. Sometimes it's a friend who's fallen on hard times. Other times it's simply a mistake. Someone sharing your information with someone else, thinking they're helping. And before you know it, your privacy is compromised. The wisest approach is to keep your passwords and sensitive data stored securely and share them only through legal, protected means. That might include naming a trusted power of attorney, setting up access with your bank for a specific representative, or using a secure password manager where information can be safely retrieved if needed. People who maintain their independence later in life often have one thing in common. They stay in control of their information, not through secrecy, but through structure. They they document, and they plan ahead, and they avoid handing over keys to their personal world unless absolutely necessary. There's nothing paranoid about protecting your digital life. It's part of protecting your dignity, your assets, and your autonomy. And the fewer people who know how to access your sensitive records, the more secure your future becomes. You're not being guarded, you're being wise. And that wisdom pays off in peace of mind and in staying firmly in charge of what's yours. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 8 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Now let's move forward. Number 9, your plans to move, downsize, or change your living situation. In your 70s and beyond, the idea of changing where or how you live becomes a very personal decision. Maybe you've thought about moving closer to family, downsizing to something more manageable, or transitioning into a retirement community. But here's where things get tricky. Sharing those plans too early and with too many people can invite a storm of pressure before you're even ready. What begins as a passing thought, maybe I'll sell the house in a year or two, can quickly snowball into advice, assumptions, or even unsolicited help. Family might push for quicker action. Friends might start treating you differently, as if you're already halfway out the door. And worse, someone might begin making plans for you instead of with you. The moment you share something as big as a living change, people naturally project their own fears, desires, or opinions onto it. Don't move too far. You'll regret selling. You should move in with us. All well-meaning perhaps, but not always helpful. And if you're still in the decision-making stage, that noise can cloud your thinking and create unnecessary tension. That's why so many people who age with clarity choose to process these decisions privately first. They journal, they pray, they talk with 1 or 2 deeply trusted voices, not the whole circle. They gather information, weigh their options, and move at their own pace. And when they're ready to act, then they share. Announcing plans prematurely, especially big ones, can turn your personal process into a public debate. And the more voices involved, the more complicated it becomes. But by holding your plans close until you feel confident and clear, you preserve the peace and agency that this stage of life deserves. You don't owe anyone early access to your process. When the time is right, you'll let the right people in. And those who truly care about your well-being will respect your pace and your privacy as you shape the next chapter of your life. Parmonitor, final thoughts. As we wrap up this video, take a moment to think about what we've explored together. These 9 things may seem small in isolation, but when you look closer, they all come back to one core idea: protecting your peace. After 70, your time, energy, and emotional safety are more valuable than ever, and knowing what not to share can be just as powerful as knowing what to say. Which one of these stood out to you the most? Have you caught yourself oversharing something that later didn't sit right? Or have you learned, through hard experience, that certain things are better kept sacred? You're not alone in that. Many of us reach this stage of life and realize that boundaries aren't about building walls. They're about creating space where respect and clarity can live. Sharing is still beautiful, but now it's about sharing wisely. With the right people, in the right moments. That discernment isn't cold or distant. It's one of the warmest, wisest gifts you can give yourself. Thank you for joining us today. We'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment below and share one thing you learned today and how you plan to use it in your life. Your thoughts are important to us, so don't hesitate to share them. Reading your comments gives us great motivation and encouragement. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Thanks for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.